Hello and welcome to the Pause It podcast. As always, I'm Dr. Sam, and with me is Dr. Robert.
Hey Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing really good.
How's your week?
So, it has been pretty good. I had a sick kiddo though. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, we have a little bit of a stomach bug going around our house, so I'm just like hoping that I don't get it. Is what I'm
Gotcha.
hoping.
Well, I'm
But
glad
so
we're talking
far,
across screens.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, you're like, you keep that in Indiana and I'll stay here in
Yeah,
California
I
and
don't need to
not
get sick
sick.
right now. I'm battling enough
Yeah.
injuries as it is. I don't need to
Oh, I know. What happened to
uh,
your hand?
snowboarding, and then I went to the doctors today, and they're like, "You tore your TFCC ligament in your hand potentially, and like you may or may not need surgery." And the young lady, I love PAs actually; they're lovely people. But she was very nice. But she's like, "We'll talk to the doctor about it and see if you need it." So hopefully not, because I'm starting to think my injuries are ridiculous. Like I broke a pinky playing football. Like, who does that? I had to have surgery on it twice. It's ridiculous. The pinky. But
Yeah.
anyway, moving on. So,
Yeah. Well, today we are going to be talking about battling the bulge,
ooh, I
weight
like that.
loss, and yeah, exactly. Well, it's the new year, and everybody always has the new year resolution to lose weight. So we figured it's a great time to talk about your weight in your cat and your dog.
I agree. That's yeah, that's it's a common issue. It's one of the few things I think that people think is cute. I think that's the problem with it. Like when they have a couple
Yeah.
extra pounds, people are like,
Hmm.
"Oh, it's cute. They're a little extra. Like there's more to
They're
love."
fluffy.
Exactly, and it's like,
Yeah.
uh, it's still important to maintain their weight.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's up there with one of the most common conversations that I have probably like 15 times a day.
So I'm curious, how do you have that conversation? Because I feel like it's you can't tell a person they're fat. You shouldn't. You shouldn't do that. But people take their pets very personally as well. So I'm curious how
Oh,
you kind of
yeah.
open that door, because I feel like I've mentioned it a couple times to owners, because it's not a very common conversation that I have, because most of the time it's
Mhm.
not centered around that. But I'm like, hey, this might help in the future to lose some weight, but it's not the focus of our conversation. It's a highlight. But you, like just mentioned, talk about it a lot. So
Mhm.
how do you approach it? Because I don't know.
Well, first off, it is my job. I have to tell people when their
That's
animals are
true.
overweight. And I think the biggest thing is reading a person. Right? So some people are going to respond to like a little joke like, "Hey, I noticed that we're, our bikini body, we don't have it right now," or it's something like that, you know what I mean? Or like,
Sure.
"Oh, uh-oh, it looks like we get, depending on also the time of year. I know it sounds silly, but like my approach may change based on like it's right after the holidays. So, people are like, I'm going on a diet.
It is your
Um,
pet too.
yeah. But some people are really not responsive to that. So I do think a big part of it is like read the owner, read the person.
Yeah,
Some
read the
people
room a
just
bit.
kind of want to know like, okay, what can I do to keep my dog healthy? And it's like, do you realize that they've gained? They went from X amount of weight to this amount of weight. Did you realize that? Or did you notice it? Is it something that you're noticing? And
Mhm.
for those people, I kind of approach it a little bit more like by the book medically, like, hey, I'm noticing this. Did you happen to notice it? What's changed? What are you feeding them? Kind of ask in a more clinical way. Other
Oh, nice.
people, especially because when you're in a regular practice, like a general primary care practice, you get to know your patients, you get to know your owners. A lot of them I've
That's a good
had since
point.
they were puppies. Um, so I will kind of say to them, I also happen to know too the people who I have known their older dogs that
Mhm.
I saw at the end of their lives, and I know that they were morbidly obese. So now they've come to me with a puppy. So
Okay,
I will
so
very often be saying, okay, so let's try not to repeat that. You know
that's a
what
really
I'm
good
saying?
call though,
Like,
because old habits
um,
die hard. That's a really good thing to consider.
it is, and it also helps you make like certain. I mean, we can kind of break down some of the like clinical decisions that could affect weight loss long term,
Yeah.
right? Like so certain breeds, I feel like if you neuter them or you spay them really early on, they have a tendency to pack weight on very quickly. So
Yeah.
those may be the ones, especially for those owners that I know are not quite as careful. I may say, hey, let's maybe not rush to, spay and neuter. Let's kind
Oh,
of,
okay. Interesting.
maybe wait until we've kind of reached our full growth, and you know what I mean? And then
Mhm.
that way it's like, okay, they're not still kind of growing, and then they think like, oh, we can just kind of feed them with abandon. And it's like, but now they're neutered. And so, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, no, I
and
think it's a
I
great call.
think, yeah, so I really have to say it's very individual how I go about it.
Mhm.
But then when I do say it, usually what I'll tell people is like, look, the scale's helpful. It told me that we went in the wrong direction. Or, hey, the scale's helpful. You made some progress. You've gone down a few pounds. But I don't actually care what the scale says. I care what their body condition is. So you don't even need a scale at home to know if your dog is fat or skinny, if your cat is fat or skinny. All you have to do is be able to feel them, and then you're going to know. You're going to look at
Yeah,
them, and then you're going to know. I don't need to even, I happen to know how much Gus weighs, but like, I don't need a scale to know if he's in a good body condition, because I want to be able to feel his ribs, not see them. I want him to have a waist that tucks in and tucks up. I don't want his hip bones to stick out. I don't want his spine to stick out. You know what I'm saying? Like there's
yeah.
that happy medium.
I think that's a really good point. That's what Sam's referring to as the body condition score that a lot of vets will use to evaluate your pet
Hmm.
on like just visual examination. You can see, like you mentioned, like their tummy tuck. That's important, and not seeing too many ribs, but being able to feel them with the gentle covering of fat. I think it's so politely put on a lot
Yeah.
of the information sheets. I think they're out of 5 or 9, depends on what scale you use.
I always use the 9. Which one do you
Use a 9,
use?
okay. I
Yeah.
what do I use? 5? I think we
You
use
should
5.
body condition score every pet you see.
Oh, I think we do. I use out of 9. I should know
I'm
this better.
just kidding.
I
Yeah.
don't well, because usually the
Like
conversations
which
I
one do
have are your pet's actually losing weight, because, like,
Yeah.
there'll be a chronic kidney cat that sees a specialist at the hospital,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, how much do they weigh this week?" It's never gaining weight in my hospital. It's always,
Hmm.
"Oh, they're down half a pound," or, "They're down a pound from last year," and so, to gain weight is a different discussion that I don't have very often.
I do have that in some cases, you know what I
Oh,
mean? And then
yeah, I'm
and
sure you
then
do
and then
too.
I do also have those people that I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you did exactly what I said. Like, your dog
You
looks
listen.
great." Woohoo. You know what I mean?
Those moments gotta be so satisfying though, like, I don't ever
They are.
get that, like, where 'cause, like, we don't get to follow up with ER. Be like, "Hey, we gave
Mhm.
some advice. Did you listen to it?" And if you didn't, or, like, if you did, like, you have that satisfaction, be like, "Hey, it worked out. Great." Like,
It
that's
worked.
so nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
it is actually really rewarding to see people really take an interest in their pet's health, and then like take ownership of whether it be like, I had this bulldog owner that, had just never had a bulldog before, and nobody had ever like sat there and been like, you need to clean here, you need to do this, you need to make sure that you do this, you need. And then next time I saw her dog looked unbelievably good, and it has ever since. And they're just the greatest, most fastidious. They're on it. They're doing everything. And you're just like, look, I'm not just making it up. Like, this works. It's the same thing with
Yeah,
weight. When they really take to heart what you're saying and they do it, it's so, because then the dog's happier or the cat's happier. I mean, cats are a little trickier. I mean, getting them to lose weight is not simple, I
it's so
think.
hard. Cats are
Yeah,
so
they
difficult to make lose weight. So I feel bad for
yeah.
any owner that goes through that because cats already don't listen to you, so good luck trying to, like, get them to lose weight.
It can happen. I mean, I've definitely seen people do it, and we'll have a really like strict talk about like, okay, did you like actually change their management, their nutrition and stuff like that?
Mhm.
Or do we have to actually rule out that there's not a disease process going on? Because like you said, I mean,
Yeah.
with cats, they are so hard to get them to lose weight. So then when somebody comes back and their cat's lost like 4 pounds, I'm like, okay, we could check blood work now just to make sure that like
Yeah.
this was healthy weight loss and that
Yeah.
this wasn't like, I don't know, thyroid, diabetes, kidney disease,
Cancer.
fill in the blank, cancer.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
unfortunately, it's
which
one of
we're
the big
not
ones.
laughing about cancer. That's not.
No, no, no.
I'm
No,
just,
no, not at
but
all.
that is like always on the list.
It's always on the
So,
list. Yes. So,
unfortunately, especially when their blood work comes back normal and they're losing weight, and you're like,
and that's the biggest question I get from everyone through
mm,
the ER. They're like, "We just did blood work last week. Like, why didn't it show up the cancer?
yeah,
That their dog's not like bleeding into their abdomen." It's like that's like the one thing that if your blood work's very normal, that's what I get concerned for of all
yeah, me
things.
too. Yeah.
So
And
it's
that's always a really hard conversation to have. I mean, not to like totally, this kind of pertains to the weight loss thing, but it's like, if your animal is losing weight and we can't explain why, like you've not changed their food or you're
mhm,
feeding them more, and then their blood work comes back and it's totally normal,
it's a
then
problem.
it's hard. I always say it, like I can't rule out that this isn't some sort of cancer, but I don't have a special test that just snap and we find it. Then you got to
Yeah.
go on a bit of a cancer hunt, and then okay, you look for it. Sometimes you find it,
Yep.
sometimes you don't.
And actually, someone I have to ask soon. I got a colleague named Dr. Andy Flory who works with Pet DX, and they actually just invented. And I don't want to butcher it, so I apologize, but I'll get more of the details from her at some point. But they invented a test that can detect, I think, certain types of cancer on a blood
Yeah.
test, which is
Is
awesome.
this
So,
is this to do
um,
with the lab? Is this to do with IDEX, or is this different?
no, she works for Pet DX. It's a
Oh,
separate company. I think that she founded
okay.
or co-founded. So
Oh,
soon I'll try and get her on the podcast because she's lovely to talk to and has a
yeah.
lot of great information. So stay tuned, folks, for the future. But
Yeah, I think that that is what we need. You know what I mean? Like a really reliable test. Because I worry sometimes, and I'm guessing this is not this, but I mean, like there are sometimes we have tests that are like, okay, well, we a positive outcome doesn't mean you have it. It just means
yeah,
that there's more of a risk that you have it. So then sometimes you're like, well, now are you just sitting there scared that this is going to
yeah,
happen because you had a positive test, but it may never, you know what I mean? Like, so I do feel like if we could have some sort of test that tells us there is a tumor here, there is cancer, there is, there's something
something to look
that
for.
would be amazing,
Yeah, I'm
give
excited
people
about it.
such
So
peace of
we'll have to
mind.
get her on at some point. I'll talk to her soon.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you're seeing your pet lose weight and or gain weight, it's
Hmm.
worth getting checked out. And I guess what are some of the tools you talk to owners about to help them lose weight? Because I
Well,
think that's a
I
big
think,
part of it.
yeah, first and foremost, I mean, the first conversation you have to have uh, is nutrition, right? I mean, like, what are
Mhm.
you feeding them? How much are you feeding them? And then also, like, really, is that all they're getting? Because that's the other thing too, is that we people show love with food. It's
Yes, they
my
do.
birthday. We're gonna have a we're gonna have a cake. I want to go out to eat. I love eating more than anything in the world. So feed me. I love food. And
Feed
I
me.
I love to feed, like I love people come over. I want to be like, here, eat this, eat that. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I
No,
mean,
it's a love language, 100%.
it is, and you want to feed your kids, you want them to be happy, and so your animals are exactly the same. And I think people have a very hard time not being like, oh, he's so cute, here's a treat. Or he went to the
Mhm.
bathroom, here's a treat. You just did something that's so great, here's a treat. And because when they're puppies or kittens, we tell them, oh yeah, reward them with food.
Yeah.
So now they've also learned, well, I get rewarded with food. Now, that doesn't motivate every dog, it doesn't motivate everybody, but for those that are
Mm.
motivated by it, like my walking stomach, that is like the
Fucking stomach.
greatest thing you can possibly. Yeah, Gus, I mean, he just literally would eat all day long if I let him. He's a
I love that
goldfish.
dog. So
He's a great guy, but man, he would eat forever. So I had to start early with like giving him treats that are fine for me to throw things at him. Like I try to
mhm,
tell people, like, get them used to eating a baby carrot or a little green vegetable, green beans,
yeah.
cucumbers. I mean, some dogs will eat lettuce. Broccoli usually gives them gas, but if your dog's not one of them, then it's always a good treat because it's pretty. You can just kind of give that to them pretty much with abandon. Not carrots, because obviously carrots have a little more sugar in them. Um,
Which I didn't realize
you
until
know,
recently. I just found out that
that
carrots had
carrots
sugar in
have
them.
sugar in them?
I did not know this.
Oh.
I thought I was eating healthy this whole time. Like, yeah, I'm having a carrot, and then someone's like, there's sugar in carrots, right? I was like,
Yeah.
what?
There's
So
sugar in corn too, like that's starchy, right? So you
corn, I
know that
knew.
that
Corn,
doesn't
I knew.
count.
Corn, I
Okay.
had that one handled. But
I was like,
carrots, I
that
thought
doesn't
like,
count either.
well, I was like, I grew up on Bugs Bunny and him eating carrots, and it's healthy. And
Yeah.
here I've been lied to my entire life.
No, it is still
Mhm.
healthy, but obviously you have to take that into account for some of your dogs that, might be struggling a little bit. But then
Yeah,
the other thing too is like what part of their life are they in? So when they're puppies, it's pretty hard to overfeed a puppy. You have to work pretty hard to do it. Most of
yeah.
the
I don't
time,
really see many fat puppies.
you do I mean, I have
Yeah,
I have found those people that are like, "Oh, I challenge you. I will overfeed my puppy, I promise." But for the most part, my kind of rule of thumb is like, look, you're not going to overfeed. This is the one and only time I will ever tell you, look at the back of the bag and feed them what the back of the bag says. That will change as soon as they are neutered, and that's what I tell them, because that there's only one time in their life that that is okay, and this is it. Enjoy
that's a
it.
really good piece of advice though, because
Yeah.
I think everybody relies on that bag, and it's not a one size fits all for pets or for
That is
people.
based that is based on the metabolic need of of a intact male. They
Oh,
have the
really?
highest metabolic need. Yes, that
Mm.
has the highest metabolic need of like all animals in the world. So that's it's not that it's a lie, but it's based on because they want to sell more food. I mean, I don't get in trouble by saying, but they want to sell more food. I mean,
Well,
that's you know what I mean. Like that's their goal. That's okay. But
I,
like that's what
I,
they want. So if you cannot ever like beyond when they are puppies, I don't you can never trust.
that's a really good point. And
Yes.
actually, it's funny how that testing. That was a sidetrack thing. Anyway, we'll talk about it another time. But the with it being like the intact male dog, that's surprising because I don't. I didn't realize it was only that was what they qualified it as. That's funny.
Well, it's the so there's like, you know, so there's like a I forget where I even learned that, but now it's in the recesses of my mind. I say it
I
all
know.
day, every
It's
day,
like
but
pulling
you
the
know, I'm like, I
cobwebs.
don't.
Like, where did I get that from?
Where did I learn that? But the fact of the matter is, it really just drives the point home of like, it's not that they're lying to you. Yes,
Yeah.
a dog this weight with certain needs this many calories, but
Mhm.
if you have a spayed middle-aged female lab, she needs a fourth of those calories. I can almost guarantee it.
And that's the crazy part because like, even my parents' dog and mom and dad, I hope you're listening to this podcast because this a call out to you guys. Your dog is overweight. And I've been trying for so long to get Trapper to lose some pounds. He's a lovely little star on our myBalto platform as well. But they feed him 3 times a day. And I heard this. I was like, guys, what are you doing to like twice a day? Like knock that off.
Yeah.
But how often do you recommend like does he think it matters how often they're fed? As
No,
long as the
I
overall
mean,
quantity is fine.
I think you got to look at overall calories. You have to look at activity.
Mm.
But the other thing too is like some dogs, like Gus would lose his mind if I didn't feed him twice a day. But there are some dogs they put their food down and they don't eat it until that night. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think part of it is I don't really have a dog in that fight too much, but I do think like so for your parents' dog, probably what I
Mm.
would tell them if they were coming to see me and they're like, well, he's starving in the middle of the day. We have to give him food. He's used to eating 3 times a day. Then I would say feed him in the morning, feed
Mm.
him at night, and give him a can of green beans in the middle of the day.
It's a good call.
He can have as many green beans as he wants. He should never feel hungry. Green beans are free. Have fun. Green beans all day long. And
3
he'll
calories.
still
Go
lose
for it.
weight. Because if you think about it, it's fiber, it's not a high calorie. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
really there's very little reason that it's healthy filler for
Yeah.
them and they can have it. I mean, truthfully, almost any veggies they can have. It's just that some of them make them gassy. So then I'm always like, just watch how your dog does with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But usually it doesn't give them diarrhea. You know what I mean? Like even those dogs with sensitive stomachs, most of them do just fine with
Mhm.
veggies. And sometimes I mean, when we were in vet school, I switched Phoebe's food and I was busy and I wasn't really paying attention. And I didn't realize that the food that I switched her to had literally twice as many calories per cup. So I didn't change the
Really?
volume of food. Yes, I didn't change
Oh.
the volume of food that I fed her, but that little pig became a very, very, very chubby piggy. And I was like, why are you so fat? What happened? And then I was like, I wonder how many calories she's getting. And then I was like, I have literally been giving her double breakfast and double dinner for like a while. And that's
She's
why
like,
she
"This is
gained
the
weight.
best week ever."
Yeah, she's like, this is awesome. You know, she's just a little fat little self. And so I literally had to cut her calories in half, which is what I did. I cut them by 50%. And then I just filled in a bunch of green beans and she lost weight.
And I think that's a smart way to do it. Like people are always like, "Well, I'm worried they're not getting enough," and green beans are a great filler. But like, if they're still gaining weight, they're getting too many calories. I think that's a very simple
Oh,
rule. Like,
100%. Yeah.
if your pet's gaining weight or not losing it, they have enough calories. So you can cut back a bit. When I used to do a little bit, like a little bit of general practice back in my internship, I was always like, "Hey, cut it by a quarter and just see how it goes. If you're still not losing
Yep.
weight, cut it by a quarter and
Mm-hmm.
see how that goes because
Yeah.
eventually they will lose weight."
I think the only other thing that you have to take into account too, and sometimes people don't believe you until you check their thyroid, because I mean, there are
Yeah.
some dogs that have real reasons why
Yes.
they're not losing weight, and that is true. But it doesn't happen as often as you think. I can tell you that I've checked many a thyroid and been like, nope, your dog just is getting too many calories. Now go back to the drawing board and figure out where those are coming from. The other big myth is that they can exercise it off. So most people, when I bring up the weight, oh yeah, we haven't been walking as much. And I will say, weight loss starts in the kitchen. You're not going to walk it off of him. Feed him less. The weight
Hmm.
will come off. Yes, you should be walking your dog. No question. They should be getting
Yeah.
exercise. absolutely. But if I ate whatever I wanted that got me to the weight that I'm at, and then I went to the gym, I'm very unlikely to lose it just from going to the gym.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's and the same I think that's the same conclusion they're coming to in, like, human medicine as well. Like, at the end of the day, they say abs are made in the kitchen. Same thing with dogs, like, that's where you
Very
lose your
true.
weight, and
Mhm.
exercise helps a lot. Like, the more muscle you have, you're gonna burn more calories, and that's great for the long term, but
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you need to eat healthy, and it goes for dogs, it goes for people, everyone.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. And, I think then we get into that conversation with cats. I
Mm,
think that that gets a little trickier, right? Because people don't like how, like, people are like, well, I can't force my cat to exercise. Or you get those cats that are like super, super, super fat, but they're running all over the house, and they're like,
mhm,
well, he's really active, but he's really fat. And I'm like, the number one reason why cats are really, really fat is because they're free fed. Almost like hands
yeah,
down. When people come in with a cat that's overweight, obese, fat, whatever you want to say, I'm always like, how do you feed them? And it's more than likely, oh, I just put dry food in a bowl, and I don't give them very much wet food though. And I'm like, okay, so switch that. Because I
right,
think what people don't understand is that, you know, cats, they're really not they're not meant to have these high carb diets, right? And so like the
mm,
dry food is more like having carbs, and then the canned food is more like, think about the Atkins diet, you know what I mean? It's got more moisture, but it's also a little bit better for them as far as the
yeah, a little
protein
more protein,
carbohydrate ratio. Yep, exactly.
yeah,
But so, and it's really tricky too, because people look at percentages the way they're listed on pet foods and try to look at them
oh,
the way that we look at, like, when we take into account, like, oh, well, it's this much fat, and I'm like, it's not that straightforward.
yeah, it's really not, and then they're different, even like I said, there's the differences between cats and dogs and how they metabolize things, what their nutritional needs are,
Hmm.
all very different, so it's gonna be different from what we want to, and that's why placing those same standards about what we eat on them is not a fair it's not a fair justification, just
Right.
'cause it's very, very different.
Yeah, but also too, trying to read a pet food label the way you
Mm.
read your pet food label, it's just not the same.
Yeah, they're very
Um,
different.
and a part of it, I wonder, it's listed that way. I guess I'm not really sure why it's listed that way. I wonder if it's to not have it be that clear, so that, I don't know, you can claim whatever you want to claim. I mean, there's a lot of dog foods out there that are not researched at all. They're
Yeah,
just formulated and thrown together, and then like have some really good marketing that make people feel like they have to spend thousands of dollars on food. And but like,
yeah,
really, if you think about it, if the food you're feeding your pet isn't a researched food, isn't like a fed food, where they've done actual feed testing and things like that, well,
yeah,
your dog or your cat is the feed test,
yeah.
you know? And so they can claim whatever they want to claim on the bag, and they can say whatever they want, and they can demonize, like, this is where the whole thing of like, oh, well, veterinarians get a kickback for recommending,
That's so funny,
certain
like,
foods. I'm like, where is this kickback? Like, I
'cause,
would
like,
love this kickback.
I don't see this kickback ever because every
Me
time I'll have an
neither.
owner every once in a while ask me, I'm like, "I don't get kickback for any of this stuff. I don't have anything to do with the larger brand foods. If anything, I just don't know where this kickback rumor comes from because that's not a thing, at least not in the veterinary industry. Maybe something more in human? I don't
I
know.
don't know if it's like illegal in human medicine to get stuff, like, I mean, remember when we were in school and they were like, you can't even get a pen because we don't want you
Oh,
to.
you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're not like, they're even stricter in human medicine. I mean, there
Yeah.
was a time where they would like take doctors on vacations and all sorts of stuff like that, but those days are.
Yeah, we missed out on that time period. That's
Yeah, we sure
unfortunate.
did. Although I don't really think it was ever the money was never really there in medicine, so I'm not sure that that was ever really
A
something
man
we
can
missed
dream,
out
right?
on.
Man can dream.
Yeah. But, I mean, like, occasionally we'll have like a lunch and learn, you know what I mean? Well, they'll pay for
Yeah.
lunch for us, but that's so that we can sit there and listen and learn, like, not, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. It's not really a kickback by any means, so
No,
so when
no.
it comes down to it, when your vet recommends a diet for your pet, it's for they actually like the diet and they think it's healthy for your pet, not because there's some ulterior motive.
Yeah, no,
Because
no. There's definitely no ulterior motive. And, I mean, you have to base it on a lot of different things. I mean, there are some people that are just very against commercial foods because they feel like they're processed or whatever else. And that okay, fine. There are
Yeah.
ways to feed your pet that are like you can home cook a diet for them, but you have to make sure it's complete and balanced. You deciding to feed your cat or dog based on what you eat, again,
Mhm.
they don't have the same nutritional needs that we do. They need
Yeah.
different things in their diet, and you really should know whether or not they're getting it. I think we talked about it a little bit last time, the balance it thing,
Yeah.
because if you actually, you may have the best intentions and you might sit there and make them beautiful organic chicken every week, but if you're not giving them everything that they need, you're really not doing them any good.
Yeah, and that can lead to diseases down the line.
Hmm.
So it's really important to
But
a
obesity
well-balanced diet.
actually really being one of them, because
Yeah.
if they're not getting a complete and balanced diet, and that's the other thing too that I find, a lot of people take a complete and balanced diet and then they tinker with it. So they're like,
Mm.
"Oh, well, I have them on this, but then I add this and I add that." And sometimes then now you've totally thrown off the balance that
Yeah.
like that's actually been, put together in a very specific way to do its job.
And
So,
like those little things add up to like I had how many owners be like, "Oh, I put bone broth in there afterwards. I
mhm.
put on this and this and this." And it adds up. And most of these pets are eating better than I am, so kudos to
Yeah.
you guys.
Right.
But it's and all those little snacks you feed them from the dinner table,
Hmm.
those add up. And I do it too. I am just as guilty. I get it. Like when Loki comes to the table, yes, I will feed him something every once in a while. He knows it. I'm a weak link in the family. I get it. But at the same time, it's really important to minimize that, especially if you're a dog that's prone to things like pancreatitis. Um, that happens more often than you guys think. And the number of ER cases that are preventable because they're
Oh
from
yeah.
owners feeding them stuff. Like I feed Loki bland stuff. Like that's the only time
Yeah.
he gets stuff.
Yeah.
But the number of cases that are preventable in the ER through your dog eating something that they shouldn't eat is outrageous. You would save so much money by not feeding. If you just stuck to the fact like I will never feed them people food is the
Hmm.
best thing you can do for your pet.
Oh
In
yeah.
terms of their weight
Absolutely.
and in terms of their dietary indiscretion, vomiting, diarrhea that follows. Like I promise you, you can
Which
stick to
is
that one
really
rule.
true. There's
Mhm.
no question. I've seen a lot of those pancreatitis cases where I'm like, oh, well, we just had bacon or we just had,
Bacon, damn you, bacon. I love
yeah,
bacon, but
I do
it's the number.
too,
That's
but
so
bacon
guilty.
and hot dogs,
Hot dogs, yeah.
right? I mean, which is basically like bacon, I guess. It's kind of
Mhm.
similar,
It's pork.
but high fat foods,
Yep. Yeah.
absolutely.
It's all from the dinner table. So just count your calories and those ones account. So as well.
Hmm. Well, that is part of it when I tell people like really, really take stock of
Mhm.
like what you feed, because they're like, well, I only feed him half a cup in the morning and half a cup at night. I'm like, of his food, but what else do you feed him? He's definitely getting us
Mhm.
something else. If that's all you feed him, and the other thing too, the other major thing is I will hand out actual measuring cups, because the number of people that are like, I feed him a cup a day, but it's a solo cup, so that's actually 12 ounces. So that's not a
Yeah.
cup. That's a cup and a half. So then also I'll be like, do exactly what you do, and then take this cup and measure what it is you've done, and then start decreasing from there. Because people are like, well, how much if I switch their food? How much should I feed them of this new food? I have no idea. How much are they eating right now? You have to figure that out. I can't
Mhm.
tell you, because I'll be wrong. I'm sure that I will, because I'm only going off of what you have told me right here.
Mhm.
And that's the other thing too, is like when I have people that are like, well, I've been free feeding my cat, so I don't even know how
How much they
much
get?
to give them. I'm like, okay, well then take a cup of food or 2 cups of food, fill their cup, and every 24 hours measure what's left for 5 days. Take the average, and that's probably what they're getting.
That's a good way of looking at it, actually.
Because I'm like, then you know at least what they're eating in a 24-hour period. And you have to actually do it though. And then you
Oh
have
yeah.
to kind of like sit there and be like, okay, well, then I ate half of a cup or whatever. But it's shocking how many calories are in the dry, cat food or whatever.
Hmm.
And then also, really, I try to stress to people like, really, if your cat will eat canned food, you really should be meal feeding them canned food a couple of times a day.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, even better if you can, and maybe we'll talk about this another day, but like if you can get them to do activity feeders, hunter feeders, an
Yeah.
activity tree,
Those
um,
are great.
those are unbelievable. They're brilliant. They're absolutely so smart. And cats, if they were left to their devices, they would eat what, like 8 to 10 times a day, small amounts, like
Yeah.
8 to 10 to 15 kibble or whatever the size of a mouse is about. And like that's not how we feed them. No, I think that's how people think they eat when they just leave out food in there. But they'll
Yeah.
just sit there and eat, and they're like, oh, it's still there. I'm just gonna go back and get it. I'm gonna eat. I mean, you do have those cats every once in a while that will like not overeat. But if you have two cats, you always have one cat that's thin, and one cat that's Garfield, and
I
it's
love
usually
that
an
comic.
orange cat.
It's always an orange cat. I love that comic. But I agree, yeah,
But
like,
it's
it's really
true. It came from
mhm.
somewhere. I mean, that
Oh,
like totally came from somewhere because that Garfield is a real thing.
mhm. There's always one cat that's much bigger in a household, and cats are like, there's just tricky, but those hunter feeders, I love them. They're a very,
Yeah,
very cool
they're
product.
amazing.
We'll try and show one to you guys eventually.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, I think we should
Yeah,
definitely highlight
yeah,
those
we should
at some
probably do
point
that
because
sometime soon.
they're
Uh,
pretty brilliant. And then there are ones like for group for like multi cat
cat
homes.
households.
Yeah, like there's like this one that I always tell people about for like a multi cat home where that's like a tree and they have to climb up and they have to like actively pull the food down.
Oh, really?
Which yeah, it's good. I mean, it's
That's
really
cool.
smart because it forces them to work for their
Yeah.
food, which is in their nature anyway, you know.
Oh, yeah. That's why I think it's so smart. It's using their true biological nature
Mhm.
to feed them how they want to be fed in most cases. So they like the challenge. Like, the cats all the time are playing with bugs and mice. Like,
Mhm.
it's just part of their hunting instinct. So
Yeah.
why not use it
Right.
and help them lose weight at the same time?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But like getting back to like what else do I tell people? I mean, I think if they're puppies, there's one conversation. If they've
Mhm.
just been neutered and it's like the first time I'm seeing them, I will definitely we warn people right when they're spayed or neutered like, "Hey, you have this is when you change their food and this is when you
Yeah.
watch their weight." And if you ever have a question, it's our door is always open for you to bring your dog back to weigh them. I always explain to them, you don't need to weigh them. This is the body condition that you want,
Yeah.
and also knowing to your breed, like some breeds, it's okay to see a little more ribs than others. You know what I mean? That's like
Yeah.
part of their body condition. So have that conversation with your vet. Like, what should they look like? That way, like, I don't have a set it and forget it thing for Gus. If I start to see that he's losing his waist a little bit, I decrease the food. If I'm like, oh, I can kind of see a whisper of your ribs a little bit more than I should, then I'll probably give him a little bit more, or I'll be like, okay, here's a extra chew or something like that.
Yeah.
But I like my dogs on the thinner side of ideal.
Agreed. I like that's the next point I was going to bring up. Like, err on the side of being a little too thin in most cases because it helps long term for a lot of the reasons we're talking about these things in the first place. It can result in diseases for your pet long term by being overweight. Not only those metabolic diseases, like we talked about briefly, diabetes can be one of them.
Especially in
Um,
cats.
mhm, yeah, in cats in particular. But also orthopedic issues. It's really tough on them. Like, dogs have a higher chance of tearing an ACL, or the dog version of an ACL, CCL, but an ACL essentially in dogs.
Hmm.
They have a higher chance of tearing one of those. Back problems, notoriously because of dogs being overweight. And it's all these little tiny Shih Tzus and Dachshunds and Malteses. They're all little pot bellies and they're very, very cute, but that's a lot of extra weight to put on their back, and how they're designed, it puts a lot of pressure on the middle of their back, and that's where they have disc issues and often need surgery. So
Hmm.
it's extremely important to watch their weight and keep them on the thinner side, if anything.
Yeah. Well, and then you have that conversation then like towards the end, I hate to say towards the end of their life, but like as dogs get older, arthritis.
Yeah,
Arthritis is an inflammatory condition.
exactly.
It's so not only is fat heavy, like on the back and all that, but it's it induces inflammation. We know
Hmm.
that to be a metabolic, it's an active substance in your body
Yep.
that you will make any inflammation that you have worse. So not only are you carrying around extra weight, which is heavy, you're also adding to the inflammation in your body. And, those poor arthritic dogs that just, I mean, even just a matter of a few pounds, people will say, wow, they're really moving a lot better. I didn't realize, how much it was impacting them.
Oh
And
yeah.
those are the guys you want to keep them moving. You don't want to keep them overactive, but you want to find that happy medium where you're keeping their muscles up
Yeah.
and you're keeping you're keeping their body condition in a good spot because there's nothing more sad than a dog who's or cat really. I mean, I think arthritis is probably not talked about enough in cats, but um because like a lot of litter box issues happen if they can't effectively get in
Yeah.
and out. Now that can be because they're fat or because they have arthritis or both.
Hmm.
Um but but yeah, I mean, you just feel so bad because then, especially those huge dogs, like nobody can lift them anymore. They can't get up. They can't,
Yeah.
go and do the things that they enjoy. Um, and it is hard. So I think sometimes it just takes a little bit of a switch in the mindset to say like, okay, I'm gonna promote a healthy body condition.
Mhm.
And that can be really, really difficult.
Oh yeah, I think we see it's difficult for ourselves. It's
Oh yeah.
difficult for us to do it for our pets too. So this is not a judgment podcast. This is a helpful information podcast. So because we all do it, like we all could lose a pound or two and be very helpful about it, but it's hard to do, and even harder for our pets because they don't know why we're doing it. But at least we have some control there.
Yeah. Well, and if you can, I mean, talk to your vet about like, well, what are some things that I can give them that they don't need to know that they're on a diet. Like you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like
Yeah,
that's why I like the veggies. I think for most dogs, though, they enjoy them. They don't know. Like
oh
you
yeah,
might look at them as like, well, I don't want to eat a can of green beans, but they're like, yeah, I'm getting people food. This is great. They don't really care that it's a green bean. And I mean, I do tell people like get the no salt added. I mean, there's
yeah.
sodium in any canned food. You can use fresh veggies too, but it's such an easy thing. Get a pallet of those. They're cheaper than most food. And
Oh
so
yeah,
it can even save you money too. So,
yeah. No, I definitely agree, and it's healthy, save you money, and it's helps them lose weight. That's the point.
and keeps them with you longer. I mean, I think that
Yeah,
is the hardest part of the conversation is that when we get to those cases where I am seeing a pet that now their life is going to be truncated because of their weight. That's the hardest one for me. It's
I
funny
agree.
to joke and be like, "Oh, they gained a couple of pounds," with those like middle-aged dogs that like, yeah, they could lose a little bit of weight, whatever. But some of those dogs that are really, really fat and it's going to take them away from their owner who loves them. What is it like on average 2 years earlier or something like that when they did comparison studies where they like took half of a litter and they fed them one way and you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about? Like,
yeah. It was a couple of years. It was a while ago.
yeah. I mean, I think they've done more than one, but I know that that was the one that
Yeah,
like because it was in labs and it like stuck with me so much. I was like, oh man, like that is pretty like concrete. And okay, veterinary studies I get like are limited in some way because they're usually very small sample sizes, so we have to
yeah,
extrapolate a lot from them. But to see that happen in like where they basically took like a litter of labs or whatever and they
yeah.
fed half of them to be just over ideal and the other ones to be just under ideal and there was an average 2-year lifespan between the two.
And that's crazy to think because, like,
Mhm.
as even my dog gets a little bit older, I would kill to have 2 more years just knowing, like, hey, like, so to know that I truncated by, maybe not feeding them appropriately, it means a lot. So I think that's an incentive enough for a lot of families to say, hey, because most of the time it does come down to they can't get up anymore because they're too heavy,
Mhm.
and they're still eating, they're still happy, they just can't walk, and how much we can help them in the long run by focusing on that early on and give them more time.
Mhm. Yeah, and also too like there's no pill that we can recommend or give that's as good as an ideal weight. There's just
Yeah,
not. We can give pills and do all those stuff once they get them to the ideal weight and on the way there, but we can
yeah.
anything we can do to keep them healthy long enough. I mean, that's really our goal. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
not to be mean, and I've definitely, I will say that I'm sure that I've upset some owners, not
Oh yeah.
trying to be cruel, not trying to be mean, but trying to open their eyes to say, hey, this is a real issue, and some
Yeah.
people really don't want to hear it. I'm never
Yeah.
mean about it, because it's not my goal to hurt anyone's feelings, but,
No, not at
but
all.
certainly,
None of us are, but we have to advocate for your pet. That's our job.
exactly. Exactly. And so, ultimately it is a battle you can win. Battle of the Bulge is a battle you can win with your animal. And if you're really failing, like not because you're not trying or anything like that, but you just feel really discouraged, talk to your veterinarian and maybe they do need blood work. Maybe they do need to be their thyroid to be checked or something like that. And
Mhm.
make sure that you're not fighting an uphill battle because we really ultimately just want what's best for your pet. It's the best thing that we can do for you is keep them around longer. That's our
Yeah.
goal.
And you can always email us for your questions too about weight loss and your pets at
That's true. I
podcast at
didn't say it
myBalto.
one time today. It's probably because I
I know.
got all confused with my headphones. But
Uh,
yes, if you have questions, you can email us at podcast@mybalto.com.
yep. Happy to answer your questions, and that way we can, give you some advice when necessary.
Absolutely. But Battle the Bulge, It's a battle you can win. We believe in you. You can do it. It's okay. Your dog won't know they're on a diet. Your cat won't know they're on a diet.
Sometimes I look at you like, I feel like there's less food in here. But yes, with these tips, they won't know.
But yeah, feel free, send us any questions. And yeah, I think that's probably all we can say about weight loss and pets tonight. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, I feel like a weight's been lifted off me. So
Well, this has been the Positive Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Good to see you, Robert.
good seeing you too, Sam.